Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to today's LinkedIn Live. As usual, I'm going to be just waiting 2 minutes so that everybody can join. I know it takes time, and I do also appreciate the fact that LinkedIn sends out reminders. So if you had forgotten about it, then it will tell you. But I'll do my introductions while we're waiting for people to join. So my name's Paul Palmer, Dr. Paul Palmer. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry now for 4 decades, celebrating this year by producing a lot of extra free, helpful, I call it content, but really it's training to help people within the industry understand some of the basics that I find often are missing. If you go and do your training through your SOPs, they're not going to tell you about the topic we're going to talk about today, for example. So today we're going to talk about the basics of GMP compliance with commissioning. Commissioning is an interesting topic because often you'll just send the engineers over to the supplier. They'll go and look and they'll say, hey, yeah, everything's fine. But what about the documentation? What about the certifications? What about the verification that everything's calibrated at the time of manufacture, not next time you go and do the audit? What about making sure that they've actually done the design the way you wanted and not just filled a gap? I have previously seen a machine in a sterile manufacturing suite, grade A. Everything looked perfect on the outside. But on the inside, when you looked on the inside, it was literally wood. And I don't mean some sort of covered wood with a nice surface coating. It was literally open, what do you call it? Bare wood, I think is how you describe it. It was a piece of pine. It hadn't even been smoothed down on the inside of a grade A manufacturing suite. And we were wondering why we were getting microbiological contamination. Well, if they'd done the commissioning the way we're going to talk about today, they would have known it was there and they would have stopped it. So we've had a couple of minutes now. My background started in microbiology back in 1986. Been auditing since 97, 98-ish. The course was in 98, but I started earlier with somebody else. I've been a QP qualified person, releasing products on a license since 2004, and I still am. And honestly, I don't intend to stop. I think doing the CPD to maintain my QP status is really good for my own professional development and conduct. It keeps me up to date, so then I can share more useful content with you. So today we're going to talk about compliance and commissioning, as I said earlier on. But in particular, the GMP aspects. I'm not going to talk about what you need to do from an engineering perspective. I'm not going to talk about technical designs. I'm not going to talk about purchasing. I'm going to talk about the specific good manufacturing practice requirements to ensure compliance when you're commissioning some new equipment. So why is commissioning a GMP activity rather than just engineering? Well, think about DQ, IQ, OQ, PQ. What's the first one? Design qualification. Well, why is the design important? Well, the design's important because if it doesn't meet your user requirements, from the user requirement spec, of course, then it's not going to work. So you have to make sure that you're verifying factory acceptance, and probably a bit earlier when they're actually doing the design drawings for you, to make sure that they're actually doing what you want. Because if they're not, then what's the point? You're only going to have problems later on. You're going to have to do an update. You're going to have to change what's installed. And once it's installed, it's going to cost a lot more. If you can get the design right at the supplier during commissioning, then you're going to save yourself a lot of money down the line. But not only that, You're going to have the evidence to show that you verified the design in advance, of course, provided you're taking the pictures, writing the documents, recording the notes, and verifying against your acceptance criteria. But when you verify it, write it down, sign it, date it. And if you've got to measure something, you want to be using your calibrated equipment while you're there. Compliance starts before manufacture. You can see on the screen, they've got their diagram on the table. If you were doing a refit of that particular facility, then there's going to be a lot of different items to take into account. You're going to want to make sure you've got it all written down and agreed before anybody starts anything. You don't want to wait till manufacturing starts and you realize that you've forgot a pipe and you can't actually get the transfer from the vessel into the manufacturing area. Or when it falls, actually not in this case, this isn't one that's going through the floor, it looks downstairs. But I've seen one where you go from above to the floor beneath, so you've got it in your mezzanine, all your supply, all your bulk, drops down the chute. Well, what if you've put a massive concrete floor because you know you've got the weight up there and you've got to drill through a steel reinforced floor to get your pipe down? Well, you don't want to do that. You want to plan it beforehand because you're going to drill through it. You're going to affect the structural integrity of that floor. Critical failures often originate at commissioning before a single batch is even considered. Regulators will examine the full system life cycle. This is what we've been talking about. I think we talked about it more for data integrity, actually, for AI, I think, on my recent presentation for the joint professional bodies for the QP symposium. We talked about the product life cycle and the use of artificial intelligence. That was quite interesting, actually. But today's expectation is clear. Commissioning is a GMP governed activity. Failure starts when you don't plan. When you don't plan what you're going to commission, when you don't understand what your acceptance criteria is. You need to think about it from a regulatory perspective. The life cycle is from the URS. Is it really? Maybe the life cycle is when you actually consider the requirements. Think about your change control. Your change control is when you're going to define your acceptance criteria, is it? No. It's probably when you're going to even think about what it is that you want before you even start writing your URS. Now, the focus has to be to make sure that you run your commissioning as a GMP activity, not just doing it from an engineering perspective. So what is it? Well, commissioning is the structured process of verifying that systems operate as intended. So what do you need to start with? Well, you need to start with the intention. So it's got to go from construction to completion and formal qualification. But it's an early stage. It's before you start your IQ. Make sure that it's fit for use and you've got your foundation of compliance for manufacturing before you even think about receiving it. For facilities, it's a bit different. You will be looking at your physical infrastructure against the design and the GMP expectations, depending on what sort of class you're building. Utilities, of course, you've got your HVAC. You've got your water for injection. If you're using that, you might be using highly purified or something else. Compressed gases. Compressed gases is something that's often not considered. My first site that I worked on was bulk oxygen, pure oxygen. Every time I walked past it, what did I think about? I thought about the impact of pure oxygen escaping. Why? Well, I didn't want to get blown up, did I? I didn't want a huge fire. And unfortunately, I knew on that site they'd had an explosion previously. But it wasn't the oxygen. It was the solvents on the floor above. Clean steam, validated for performance. Now, clean steam's one that I've dealt with a lot because I used to do the steam sterilization validations. That was interesting, actually. I was doing it for medical devices and for medicinal products. And the impact of not having the right quality of steam is amazing. You just totally screw up your sterilization. And of course, I was testing the biological indicators because I started in microbiology. What about equipment? Well, you've got your manufacturing and process equipment. It needs to meet the user requirements as well as the technical requirements. Now, imagine you've got a piece of equipment and you've got your control screen. And they say, oh, we'll put it on this side because that's where the connections are. But all of your staff are on the other side of the equipment. And you just happen to be having a piece of equipment that's maybe, I don't know, 10 meters long. And every time they want to press a button, they have to walk all the way around, press the button all the way back again. It's not going to work, is it? So it doesn't meet the user requirements. What about technical requirements? Well, need it to meet a minimum run speed of 100 per minute. That's an easy one to check speed as it's going through. What about weight? What about the capacity of that spindle that you're going to hold the foil on? Has that been considered? What about the avoidance of rogues? Any tablet that falls off, you have to make sure it's below the web, that it's not going to be trapped in a location that it's then going to fall into the next batch. And then, of course, we have automation. We've got the control systems, the software, integrity of the actual equipment, maybe, and data. Data reliability has become something that's right at the top of everyone's thoughts. But if your data at the point of commissioning is inadequate, then you are at risk of recalling everything that you've manufactured on that equipment right from the point of installation. Imagine that. You've had your inspection, everything's fine. We've looked at how you're going to do your commissioning, what your plan is, based on your SOPs. But then you go to the site and they won't let you take any pictures. And they won't let you take your digital notebook into the facility where they're manufacturing because they've got a higher specification than you're used to for particulates, which maybe it's a good thing with electronics. But if you've not got the evidence and you cannot prove that that equipment is working according to the specification because you didn't adequately control the data from your commissioning, how are you going to prove it? How are you going to show that it works? Think about that in your next risk assessment. The link between commissioning and good manufacturing practice. Well, design phase, define what the expectation is in advance, not after the event. Installation, traceability, and testing, of course. But commissioning decisions will directly impact product quality outcomes. Poorly controlled systems will result in compliance issues, vulnerabilities. Common industry mistakes. Well, treating commissioning as engineering only, excluding QA until it's too late to influence the outcomes. Poor documentation control during testing. I've seen people scribble it on a piece of paper when really they should have had a form that they've defined up front and use it to write the right information in the right place and make sure they've actually got what you need. Make sure that you've written those essential results down. But one that I have seen many times, many times, is we'll fix it during qualification. We'll fix it when we get to the next stage. And the people driving that are usually the manufacturers. Because often you'll find in the contract it says that there's an actual installment of payment on receipt at site. So they want to get to site as soon as possible, even if it's going to put a compromised position for the equipment and extended timelines, because they haven't actually got what they need at your site to fix it. But they're always in a rush. Push, 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 push. Everything's fine. Let's deliver it. No. You want to make sure you fix the problems as early as possible, as early as you can. So what are you expected to see? What do the regulators expect? Well, you need your URS. You need to define your expectations. You need to document a formal design review. You want to make sure that you're using Q9, ICH Q9 R1. Why? Well, you want risk-based approach, risk-based testing. And of course, you have to make sure that everything is traceable start to finish, that you're covering Alcoa Plus principles, that you're managing all the deviations. Incomplete traceabilities between the requirements, tests, and outcomes is one of the most common commissioning-related inspection findings. You don't want any of that in your next one, do you? So make sure you plan in advance what it is that you're going to write and where. Make sure you know exactly where you're going to write it, or type it, or print it, but make sure you know how you're going to capture it. Critical risks. Well, the systems that are critical to performance, of course. Environmental controls. You've got your HVAC in your environment, pressure differentials, air change rates, room class, but often people miss the smoke studies. Make sure somebody looks at them, because the worst thing you can have is you've done your smoke studies and some third party signed them off for you, but nobody actually looked. And you find that the smoke study clearly shows a dead area that was supposed to be circulating. Or when they open the door, the air passes out through the door and some fresh, dirty air comes in. Water systems. Water systems are high risk. Biofilms, endotoxin, microbial contamination risk from poorly commissioned WFI and purified water. You can't wait for the failures. Make sure that you've engineered out dead legs. Make sure you don't have loops that are not necessary. Make sure your loop that they've manufactured has been cleaned. Often they'll say, no, we can't do it because we haven't installed it yet. Well, they can install it as a test. They can set it all up ready, but they can't do the welding, of course. If they can't do the welding, you need to be able to agree upfront how they're going to sanitize it. Automation, data integrity, we already mentioned slightly. Electronic records, audit trails, access controls to meet Alcoa Plus principles from day one. You don't want somebody who's had admin rights for the last 10 years while they're making it. No, maybe not that long. 6 months, maybe. You don't want them to still have admin rights once you go live. You want to make sure you start with the URS, defining the expectation, not handover. Oh, yeah, we'll sort that out later. No, it's too late. Alarms is an interesting one. You can always falsify an alarm by applying something to the sensor. People don't want to. I don't know why. And then, of course, you need to set it up fully to actually send out those 3 parallel alarms that you expected in your URS. And just because it's difficult for them to test doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. And if it then needs to be done at factory acceptance and then later in the actual facility, don't mind. Do the job 3 times, as long as it means it works. Documentation. Now, we've talked already about Alcoa Plus a bit, but the one I want to highlight now for the documentation, that's a train going behind me, is available. Often I find that commissioning records are the ones you can't find. Remember, not only have they got to be generated, not only have they got to be treated according to GMP, but they also need to be accessible, available for that inspection. Clear, controlled, traceable, version control. No informal testing. If you've done some informal testing, fine, but don't rely on it. Do it properly as well. Good documentation is going to reduce your future burden. Strong commissioning records accelerate qualification and simplify your change control. If you don't do it right up front from the beginning, then you're only laying up some problems for later. Teams. There's many companies that work in silos. There's no reason for it now. Everybody's got this method of communication. We could be on Teams, we could be on Zoom, instant messaging, WhatsApp, telephone. There's so many choices. There's absolutely no reason these days for anybody not to be involved. Commissioning is a shared responsibility. It's not the engineer's responsibility on their own. The engineering should be involved. QA needs to be involved. Validation involved. Operations often won't want to be there. But why not? If they're the end users, they should understand how it's going to be used. Don't rely on QA to tell you, oh, well, he's going to stand here and he's going to do that and he's going to open this. No. Operations, manufacturing, whoever's actually going to run the machine should have a detailed understanding of it. So what's good? What do we want to look for? What do we want to achieve? Well, we want to look at early engagement, quality assurance principles being applied. That's not the QA department. Quality assurance principles. Controlled execution, not ad hoc. And a confident handover because you know everything's been resolved. When it's done well, when it's executed well, qualification's actually faster. Audits from your next inspector will be easier. And operational confidence is actually built in to the life cycle. Not waiting until the next person finds out you've done it wrong. You want to get it right up front, don't you? So we want to start with risk assessment right from the start, risk-based strategy, quality assurance principles right from the beginning, deviations resolved, not left till the next stage. They want to be doing at the time. Commissioning, setting out the culture, reliable systems, predictable performance, a life cycle that shows, yes, we know this is going to work, strong compliance foundations, and most importantly, operational confidence. Because if you've got confidence in operations, well, what's that going to mean to the team? Well, their morale's going to be up here instead of down here saying, oh, got a new machine, it's going to go wrong. I used to work at a site where every time we got something new in, they said, it's not going to work. Well, that's not helping anybody, is it? You need to have confidence in your systems and processes right from the beginning. Okay, so with that confidence, I want to thank you for joining me for another LinkedIn Live. I hope you're going to connect with me. I've added some additional links this week. You can see at the bottom, they've got my LinkedIn link on there and YouTube. And I've just realized, even though I thought I'd done it right, they've gone a different color, but I can't explain why. So my name, as I said at the beginning, for those of you maybe that joined late, is Dr. Paul Palmer. I'm a pharmaceutical consultant, a trainer, a QP, an auditor. I'm the founder of the Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence. And you can get hold of me on the email address there. You can come and see us at the website. But also, I'd like to ask you to join me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and follow me on YouTube. Now, I know these lives go out on both platforms, but you won't get the shorts that I produce on LinkedIn. You'll only get them on YouTube. You won't get everything on YouTube that I share with you on LinkedIn. So honestly, you should really be doing both. Now, I hope you found it useful. And I just realized I didn't actually talk about my the messages. So if you've got questions, then do put them in the comments, because I'm sorry, but I forgot to look. So thank you. I hope you found it useful. If you do want to ask more about GMP compliance during commissioning, then please ask. Send me a message, write a comment, write an email. I don't mind. You can do it whichever way you want. Just get in touch. And of course, I do look at them all myself. Unless the only time when I don't is if I get spammed with hundreds and hundreds of messages from one account and it's clearly not real. Then I get somebody else to fix it for me. But if you write to me personally, I will reply personally. I will review what you've asked, your questions. And if it's something that we need more time with, then I'll offer you the service. So thank you for joining. I hope you found today useful. And I'll see you again soon.